and Giles. On tonight's special podcast, we'll be looking back at the 03-04 Invincibles Premier League winning team, as this is the 20th anniversary of that special winning squad and of special international talents. So sit back and enjoy the show. I'd also like to give a shout out to our friends at Pepsi, thirsty for more. And as all Arsenal fans are, we indeed are thirsty for more trophies and success. So long may the good times roll with Mikel Arteta. On tonight's show, I'm joined by my regular guest, Carl Ozzy Osborne. How are you, Ozzy?
I'm good, mate. Good to be here.
I'm also joined by, who are you, Eamonn Donnelly?
Evening, Jonathan. Evening, Carl. Evening, Conor. You got the headphones on there, like Jesse B there. Back to life, back to reality there. No, we're good. Good to see you, and good to see you again, Conor. Thanks for coming on.
My absolute pleasure. Great to see you guys. Yeah.
Match of the day commentator, Conor McNamara. Great to have you back on, pal.
Great to have you back on, guys, and great to see Arsenal are still up in that title race. We hoped they would be when we last spoke, and they're right in it this time, aren't they? Brilliant.
Yeah, it's been a nice turnaround since Mikel took over. I know Eamonn was shouting now for Arteta out, but that's all good. That's put to bed. Thank God.
I hope it's not deja vu, Conor, because we were full of hope last time we spoke to you, and look how what happened. So we're full of hope again. We're full of hope.
It's different this year, though, isn't it? It's different. There's more of a backbone, and the signings have really kicked them on. I mean, I even think Jorginho coming in, who you wouldn't have thought at the start of the season he'd be an important player, but what a difference he's made. Been brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a difference of bringing in a player that's seen it all and being successful, winning titles, trophies. That's the difference. What a signing. I never thought we'd sign anyone like that last January. You're always thinking of a top name, but Jorginho, it was just really good transfer business, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because I think we all expected great things about Declan Rice, and I was actually, having lived in England for so many years, I used to always slag off my BBC colleagues and say, like, how come there was like an Irish guy was captain of the England cricket team? I was like, like that can't be right. I mean, and now the captain of the England football team is a former Republic of Ireland international. I mean, like, where is this going to end?
Throw in Owen Farrell into the mix.
Sure, look, exactly. I mean, come on, you have to draw the line somewhere.
Yes, the luck of the Irish, as they say.
Conor, I might be captain of the Dublin Arsenal five-a-side podcast team too, so I'm just trying to balance it out, being an Englishman on the show.
Exactly, yeah. Are you able to hurl? We could bring it down to Limerick, yeah.
I'll give it a
go. To be honest, Ozzy, you wouldn't look out of place on the Emirates five-a-side pitch the way me and Eamonn played a few years ago. To be honest, only for me and goal that day, we would have won nothing, so I won't take all the credit. No, it's, as we said at the start of the show, it's the Invincible show, hashtag immortal, as they say. A few stats and facts I'll delve into. Play 38, 126, drew 12, and of course lost none, scoring 73 goals, conceding 26, and finishing off with 90 points. We secured the title at White Hart Lane in a 2-2 draw on April 25th. Goals by Perez and Vieira. Sadly, Jamie Redknapp and our very own Robbie Keane got a last-minute penalty to spoil the celebrations. But the old fake trophy, as Eamonn said before we came on air, was a nice touch, as they wouldn't present it to us. It's the only time. Sadly, it would have been nice to be presented with the real trophy, because sports fans sadly aren't used to seeing real silverware, but there you go.
I wonder, sorry to interrupt you, I wonder what's going to happen this season if it goes down to the last day and you've got the three teams could all still win it. And I mean, it might even be that there's more than one Premier League trophy. But don't tell anyone that.
Well, you're sorry to Pepsi Cola, this wasn't a Coke bottle I was holding up. No, if there is 3 Premier League trophies, Conor, we do have the gold trophy, so we can bring that with us on the day.
Very good, very good. Not all trophies are the same. Not all trophies are equal. Yeah,
it's not every trophy.
Sorry, Conor.
Before I was rudely interrupted by Conor, sorry. Thierry Henry was the top scorer that season with 30 goals. Second to Thierry Henry in the Premier League goal scoring list for ourselves was Robert Perez on 14 goals, which kind of surprised me when I look back today on it. Arsene Wenger was Premier League Manager of the Year. The monthly awards, Arsene Wenger won the August and April award for
Is that all?
of the month. Yeah, it was quite surprising. I thought he would have won the whole lot. I suppose they felt sorry for the rest of them.
But then, Pep Guardiola hasn't won it for 2 years or something. They don't give us, when you're that successful, it's almost like, oh, look, here's the guy who's doing well at the bottom. Or
Yeah, I was surprised at that. Yeah, that he only won it twice in that calendar year of the season. Yeah, Thierry Henry won it, the Player of the Month in January and April, and Dennis Bergkamp and Edu won it in February for ourselves. PFA Player of the Year went to Thierry Henry. He won 87 points to win that award. He won it back-to-back, of course. In the PFA Team of the Year, there was Lauren, Ashley Cole, Sol Campbell, Patrick Vieira, Robert Perez and Thierry Henry in that Team of the Year. So a really strong year for us. To be honest, all 11 could have made it, to be honest.
Managed by Sam Allardyce.
His favourite manager. Big Sam, if you're listening, there's an Irish position there going for you. I'll come to you, Conor. Your memories of the Invincible season that stood out for you.
So I saw a lot of Arsenal that season. I joined BBC in 2002, and I was my girlfriend, my now wife, was living in a flat in Islington at the time, so we were in that area. And I used to go in the early days. I'd do a lot of commentaries on Sports Extra, which was the sort of this digital radio thing. It still goes at the sort of alternative. When there's two big games on at the same time. But in the early days, that's where I would get my sort of, breeding ground and being able to. And I remember doing a lot of games and with very random. Sports Extra was the thing in those days where, that they would try people out to be a commentator. I remember doing a commentary with Mark Pugac, who's now, of course, illustrious presenter. And he was a massive I think he just wanted to go to the Arsenal game, but he was doing the commentary. And I remember doing commentaries with David Croft, who's the Sky Sports Formula One commentator, and David Oates, who sadly passed away, but all these players back down through the years. I remember there was a game when Newcastle were playing Barcelona in the Champions League, and it got called off because of the rain. And Arsenal were playing, I think, Valencia, but I could be wrong on that. But the Champions League game at Highbury, and at the last minute, it became the commentary. So I was meant to be there just doing reports, but because the other game was called off, I get sort of pulled up, and they were running around trying to get a co-commentator to be with me, and we're trying to see if there's any former players in the hospitality lounge or whatever. Of course, the old Highbury, there was so few of that kind of thing anyway, and it ended up that Henry Winter, the journalist, did the commentary with me actually that night. But I remember going to it, the very tiny press box, sort of left of the halfway line as you look out onto the pitch, clock end away to the left-hand side, and we used to have the very front row of that, and there was a few pillars, all right, but our position was sort of in between them, so we weren't hampered by that. And then I remember you would go down the really narrow little staircase with the tiles in the wall, and you'd go into the press room, which by modern standards now was tiny, but at the time felt really classy, felt prestigious kind of place. And I remember the food was always good there. And again, relative, nowadays it'd be very basic, but back then that was, oh my God, this is really nice. They don't just give you a paper cup, they give you a porcelain cup at Arsenal. It was that kind of stuff. So I remember all of that, and the sort of, being very grateful that I was staying in Islington at the time, because I could just walk back to where I was staying and I didn't have to sort of crab into the tube. And I always walk past the crowds trying to get into at Arsenal tube station. And, it was a tiny little entrance at the best of times, and you have all these people. But yeah, those are sort of my memories. I love those roads immediately outside Highbury, and the guys would be selling the old programs and those little, badges, the little metal badges, and all that kind of stuff was fascinating. But that season, going through the campaign, it was runaway train, absolutely. And there was other good teams around the time, and Manchester United had been absolute cock-a-hoop in the seasons building up to that. But not only was that team beautiful to look at, graceful, skillful, but they were hard as nails. You wouldn't pick a fight with any of them. And, take who like the shorter stature player, like Freddie Lundberg, he'd kill you. They were tough. Pires, hard as nails. Dennis Bergkamp looks like an assassin in a James Bond movie, and he could do all this ballet, and he could be poetic, and he could be, graceful, but he was tough. And you look back at it now, and the referees didn't give them the protection. He was getting clattered by centre halves, but he would give it back as well. And I think that fight, that edge, obviously Vieira was an enforcer. You just didn't mess with that team, Keown and all those guys. They're just, yeah. So that was my memory of just an absolute militant gang who were going to get the job done. And it was a fantastic season.
Yeah. Who were your standout players, Conor, out of the other Arsenal squad that season? There was so it would be very hard to, being such a, as you said yourself, such a strong squad of quality players. Who stood out for you?
Yeah, look, you have to say Henry, don't you? When you talk about standing out, he was at his peak then, wasn't he? And he'd obviously go on and play for Barcelona and stuff, but I don't think he ever played better football than that season. And not that he was a one-season wonder for Arsenal. He'd several campaigns, but he was just head and shoulders. I'm pretty sure that he only missed one game as well the whole season, didn't he? He played in pretty much, I think, all but one of those invincible games, and the game that they didn't play and they didn't win, which was. I can't remember. But anyway, but yeah, so he was just fantastic, and he had the swagger, the attitude. I think and it was a different world from nowadays. People, the social media, and you see the players, and what's going on or whatever. But he had this, and look, Roy Keane had this as well. But you'd sit down on Sunday to watch a match of the telly, and you'd see him in the tunnel, and he was just this mystique character, and he was so sophisticated with his va-va-voom and his French and whatnot. But he was, and he's a good-looking guy, and he just absolutely had that star power. You couldn't keep your eyes off him. And of course, he used to that lovely role where he'd come in off the left flank, and he'd pick up that wide position. And he'd cut in, and defenders didn't know whether to stick or twist. And that team, I think you see it with the current Arsenal team, you see it with Manchester City these days. They were so good at those inverted runs, and they'd get it to the ball and drag it back and stuff. They were on each other's wavelength, weren't they? It was brilliant to see. But yeah, look, a team of brilliant players, but he was the standout for sure. Yeah,
there was what you referenced there, Conor, Thierry Henry, the way he used to run at defenders. Jamie Carragher absolutely hated going up against him. There was that 4-2 win at Highbury where he left him on his arse.
Yeah.
He was just one of those players that defenders hated to play, like our own Saka nowadays. Players just hate strikers running at you, don't they? Defenders just hate it. Yeah.
Look, that's what he was. He had the pace, but he was always in control. And this thing actually, they say about commentators is like you should never get too excited for a goal. You're screaming and roaring, people can't hear you. And that maybe it's a silly analogy, but it's just what I know. But with Henry, you never felt he was sprinting to his absolute max. Everything was in control, and if he needed to, he could give a little bit more if he had to. But he wasn't going to over push anything. No shot was actually blasted as absolute hard as he could. Everything had a precision, surgery about it. And it was fantastic to see. But that is a guy who was in control of his craft at that era. Everything, and he knew it, and he was able to, he wasn't a showboater. He wasn't like a sort of who I think David Ginola type of guy. But wasn't that? But he could do a flicker, he could do a trick, and he would do it with confidence. And it never seemed to be showing off. It was always because that was the best thing to do at the time. But it just came from that confidence that he had. That I can do this, and look, even if it doesn't work. The fans love me. I'm having such a good season anyway. But the speed that he would run with the ball was wonderful to watch.
Yeah, I was watching when we played Inter Milan at San Siro with the 5-1, and Clive Tilsley was the commentator that night. And one of the quotes he says was he was the best player on the planet. Yet that year, Pavel Nedved had won the Ballon d'Or. How did Thierry Henry?
Politics.
Yeah. It's just crazy, but he says himself, Henry, he went to so many top clubs after that, and he says Arsenal was always the club that he had the best memories from. And it's like several Arsenal players that have left, like Ian Wright. It's like a home, isn't it, Arsenal? Like it's like an institution. It's different from any other club. You're made to feel well. Yeah,
it was, and I think any of your younger listeners who maybe will obviously be aware of the team at the time, but mightn't sort of appreciate fully how. And look, this was a benefit to the Irish team at the time was that it was a very British Isles kind of game up until just a year or two before that, and Arsenal were one of those who embraced not just the bringing in of foreign players, which all teams did, but the foreign culture. And Wenger was widely lauded. And these are such basic things now, but at the time it's like, oh, he's interested in their nutrition and what they're eating, and this was the crazy idea, and this would be the era when Paul McGrath and Brian Robson and Norman Whiteside would be drinking pints to beat the band, and the thought that people would be doing Pilates and watching their diet and doing stretches and so. I mean, it was incredible, but at the time that was seen as a very foreign, sophisticated, scientific sort of approach, and in the mold of Wenger, who obviously embodied that perfectly, Thierry Henry was part of that. He was sort of the French sophistication. You could tell that he was a cultured guy and that he was intelligent, and he thought about the game. And this was completely different to what had come before, where it was all about having heart and fight and being tough enough. And these were a different toolbox that he brought to the game. And I think Arsenal went on embodied in that over the next few years. I think the whole club just became engendered in the image of Wenger. Obviously, the move to the new stadium was all about Wenger, and it was sad the way, in a way, it was sad the way it ended. He probably should have gone a year or two before, but it was his team, it was his club. It had been molded in his image. But yeah, back at that time, Wenger and Henry were just the height of football sophistication, of which the game had never seen before.
Yeah, very well said, Conor. Yeah, so many great memories with Thierry Henry. Brings back tears. This does. All good memories, and many a drunken night was had watching the Arsenal. Eamonn, you're a lifelong Gooner as well. Your memories from the Invincible team, just great to watch, weren't they?
Yeah, well, when I was thinking about this, I kind of just decided I'd ask myself, what were my 3 standout moments, And the first one was signing Jens Lehmann. Because we signed a goalkeeper who was clearly in need of anger management therapy, right? But he was different.
I think he still is, yeah.
Yeah, probably. But at the time, we'd had David Seaman, who'd been absolutely terrific for the club. But David was past his best. And there was, a bit like Liz Hurley, that dress. There was that save against Sheffield United when he saved an impossible goal, as good as the bank save in my view. But it was David Seaman reaching into his memory box one last time, because he hadn't been great in the 2003 season. And that ponytail was at its longest, I think, ever. And Brian Clough, who was my all-time hero, folks, Brian Clough said, he's a lovely lad, but you can't keep going with hair like that. And, David was past his best. We brought in Jens. Nobody knew what to think of him. But there's 2 things that stood out to me straight away. And I played the game. I could play a small bit, And first of all was that he was, now looking back 20 years ahead of his time, he was a sweeper keeper. He was outside his box the whole time. And, okay, once or twice he made gum-ups that cost us goals, but he got us playing from the back in a way that wasn't known at that time. And the second thing was, Aaron Ramsdale, please take note. When he was standing underneath set pieces and corners, he stood with his elbows out, ready for action. Nobody is coming into my parish. You can jostle me, but I've got pointy elbows and I'm going to hurt you. And he was really a dominant goalkeeper. And if you read about the Invincibles, I think Amy Lawrence did a brilliant book about them. If you read about them, the amount of fights that Lehmann had with his own players just to strive to be the best and for them to be the best, I think he was an integral part of that team. That's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, the game at Old Trafford. And while I was waiting to come on the show, I looked at a 10-minute highlights package of that game. And there's a few things. But first of all, Ronaldo had chewing gum in his hair. If anybody remembers it, I think it was a kind of a Wrigley's Jew. It might have been juicy fruit. I don't know. But Conor mentioned this about how the team could look after themselves. Every player on that team could handle themselves. Lauren was like a middleweight boxer.
Yeah.
Sol Campbell was Sol Campbell. As you say, you take Perez lightly with his little Daffy Duck. He could look after himself. Lundberg could look after himself. Colo was just, Colo didn't see danger at all. He just, but Dennis But, you know, the standout player for me, obviously Henry was a standout player worldwide, but I've had the pleasure of being in the company of Ray Parler a couple of times, entertainment, and he always says in training, he says, but the players that we had back then, and he says, Gilberto Silva was an absolute Rolls Royce, and he did things in a Ronnie Whelan type of way. He could turn the game around with one touch, so he never had to make a tackle because he was never in the wrong place, you know. So he intercepted the ball and with one touch got us back on the offense. So when you've got guys like Henry, Lundberg, Pires, Bergkamp ahead of you, and you can turn it around the game quickly, it's a, you know, and to me, Gilberto's also. So that, and then of course, I just want to relate this story very quickly. My bladder and big incidents in games, the stars are aligned. So I was watching that game in a pub in Capel with a mate of mine that we call the Grim Reaper. His philosophy on life is every silver lining has a cloud. And I said it was 90 minutes. And we were down to 10 men, and I just could not hold out anymore. The All-Ireland football final was on the same day in 2003, right, September. And I went to the loo, and when I came back, he was just sitting there, told you. And United got the penalty. And we both watched it in horror. And then when Van Nistelrooy hit the bar, I think I did more to me mate than Keown did to Van Nistelrooy. I mean, if you look at the scuffle after that game, I'm not condoning it. Martin was way out of order, but nobody, you know, in all the jostling that went on, none of the United players came towards Martin. Martin was King Kong. He was just phenomenal. He loved combat, you know, and I just looked at the reaction of the players after that game. We'd absolutely screwed up the title the year before. People said we bottled it. That hurt, and I think that game, if we lost that game, the title could have been a completely different race. I think that was the team being born and bred. I've skipped the Liverpool game as a memory because it was on Good Friday, and obviously we had to close the curtains at 3 o'clock and do the Stations of the Cross. So you know, I was listening to that one on BBC 5. But the other thing that stands out from that season is, as you said, when they wouldn't give us the trophy at Spurs because of possible crowd trouble. And we brought out an inflatable trophy and put it in the middle of the pitch. I just thought, like, as moments go, you know, that's as good as it gets. But terrific team. The one thing I noticed from the United Arsenal game commentary, and I'd forgotten how bad it was. Andy Gray is shocking. He's absolutely shocking. Like, talk about a Man United, you know, died in the wool. He can see no wrong. So Vieira was wrong to kick out of Van Nistelrooy, who had just landed down the back of his studs. You'd need to be, anybody knows the Guinness Book of Records, Robert Wadlow was the tallest man of all time. I think he was 8'9" or something like that. You would want to have been Robert Wadlow to make contact with Van Nistelrooy when Vieira kicked out. He kicked out because he'd just been landed on, and Van Nistelrooy was nowhere near him. Had Van Nistelrooy stood still, and I'm not saying he should have, it was gamesmanship and all the rest, but he had what was coming to him that day. But Andy Gray was, oh, you stupid boy, and Patrick, and this, that, and the other. Definitely a penalty. Oh, you can see Martin. Oh, look at the view the referee's got. It was shocking. You know, it was absolutely shocking. And I think they found a rightful niche in broadcasting. But look, that was it for me. The other thing that I noticed was before Van Nistelrooy took the penalty, Jens Lehmann introduced what I'd call, you've got the moonwalk, you've got the camel walk, the space invader. He was on the goal line, kind of going. I'd say Van Nistelrooy was looking at, you know, the bonus target that comes across in Space Invaders at the top, and that's why he hit the crossbar. It's the first time. Remember, you used to be able to move at all, but I think around then they introduced a law that you could move once you were on your line. Here, Jan's just back and forth like it was. So yeah, great. Just one more thing before you go on to Carl. How good was Gilberto? Well, he kept the Edu out of the team. And Edu was a smashing player, and another guy who could look after himself, and a very perceptive player. That's how good Gilberto was. So that's my take on it now, Jonathan.
I'd just like to say before we move on to Carl, if Van Nistelrooy did score that penalty, God knows what Martin Keown would have been like. He wouldn't be alive today. I say he says I better miss this. But I do want to say another top co-commentator out there.
Probably would have went out for dinner with Jens Lehmann, and they might have had some candlelit sushi or something, I think. Maybe. No, maybe not.
There is one certain player that's a co-commentator now on Arsenal.com. Is Jeremy Aliadier. Now, Eamonn does a great piece of...
with the beautiful move, ain't it, mate? Yeah, beautiful move, yeah. Right. Yeah, he was very unlucky. He was like his knee was done. He was a terrific player. And he'd broken all the records at, what do they call it, Clairefontaine, and he was quicker than Henry, and beautiful touch on him. But he only played about 50 or 60 games for us, but his knee was badly done. He was a terrific prospect. He was. Yeah.
I might be mixing this up. Did he make his debut the same game as Fabregas? Or would that be a different year? Remember, it was against Wolves in a league.
Yeah, I think Fabregas made his debut in a league
and he scored.
Yeah, he scored in the penalty. He scored. Yeah.
But I remember Aliadier, and because he was new, he's a kid coming through, whatever. But going around before the game, like, how do you pronounce the name? Like, how do you say it? Because it's obvious now once you've sort of seen it, and no one knew. It was like, with no idea, and it was like, find someone who's French, and we eventually got a stab at it. But that was always my abiding memory of him. And again, at the time, thinking, right, this guy is going to go and take off, and as you say, he was very, very unfortunate that he didn't get a chance to do so.
Well, for the younger viewers, I'll pronounce his name for you. Jeremy Aliadier, mate.
Yeah, he was a talented Conor. I know his son actually, I think, is playing a bit of ball now as well. But yeah, aside from cracking misses as well, a top baller, yeah.
just actually, before you speaking of Gilberto Silva, I remember commentating. It wasn't the Invincible season, but there was a League Cup game at Doncaster, which was either going to extra time or going to a replay or something. And I remember he absolutely just took it by the scruff of the neck, and he won the game by himself. He made a sliding tackle in midfield. He played out the wing to someone. He ran in the box. Ball came in, header. I remember just thinking, what a powerful goal, and how few players could actually score that. But you're right, he was special and probably underrated at the time. It's only when you look back now you think, wow, how presumably loads of caps in Brazil and all the rest of it. Yeah.
I think because there were so many top players in that squad, he just kind of got absorbed into it. But he got the first goal at the Emirates against Aston Villa, and he scored a cracking goal against Middlesbrough at the very start of that season as well. But yeah, what a player. And he still goes to all the games at the Emirates as well, Gilberto.
I was just going to say what an absolute gent Gilberto is, because the stuff he does for charity, stuff he does with the Arsenal fans, he's still very present at the club. What a gent he is.
I might move on to Carl. So, your memories from a very, very special team, Carl.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground already, but I think every Arsenal fan knows where they were when Van Nistelrooy missed that penalty. I think that's very clear, isn't it? I can tell you exactly where I was. I was on the seafront in Benidorm, feeling very hungover after taking on too much of an open water swim. Nearly died, I think, that day. But I still managed to make it to the pub afterwards and watch that game. So that's how dedicated I was. But yeah, what a game that is, and Eamonn summed it up very well. Look, I think. Yeah, Eamonn sort of the three standout moments for me. But what I've done a bit of research on this. I all know I watch videos on YouTube when I'm preparing for these podcasts, and mentality is a word I would use for that too. A strong mentality of that team. You've touched base on it already, Conor and Eamonn. But how many of those games that season did we win in the tunnel? The way they are. But there's a recent picture just come out of the current team with Ben White, Gabriel standing there looking at the opposition, trying to intimidate them. But you had that with this team, right? We wouldn't. We were so strong. The mentality was there, and even I sort of took a bit of a different approach to looking at this, because a lot of the games we won I remember, but it's the games we didn't win, the draws. And it was that sort of can't lose mentality. Like, I think one of our toughest opposition that season was Portsmouth. And if anyone remembers that game at Fratton Park, the atmosphere, like that was the first time I think I actually physically felt sick watching a football match, because I could see him doing us. I really could. That day, it was an unbelievable game, and I remember I was on telesex just refreshing all the time, like CFAX, whatever it was, but I think it's CFAX at the time. But I was on page 302, whatever it was, looking at that, trying to, because I couldn't listen to it on the radio. I literally, it was better just seeing it scroll on CFAX. But yeah, that for me, the mentality of that team, and Eamonn sort of touched base on that Man United game for me is my standout moment. Man United are still to this day the rivals for me. I know we talk about that like the road, but I'll be honest with you, Man United's I grew up in that era, and watching that game, and I think it was in September, wasn't it? I think, if I remember right. So that for me sent a message that we wasn't going to get turned over, we wasn't going to be bullied. We're a strong Arsenal side, and we sort of carry that through. And so you can sort of make comparisons really with his current team in terms of strength and mentality as well, and that's what I think I'm enjoying this season so much, looking at this current team. But the mentality of this side was unbelievable, and even you got to look at the last game of the season when Leicester, I think they went up 1-0 up as well. I think it's Paul Dickoff, wasn't it, with the goal?
That's right,
But nerves would have been playing part in that, but they just got the job done. And I think for me, we've talked about Henry and Gilberto and that, but Patrick Vieira was just the person that led that team. He was the machine. He was the strength. He was the one they looked to when they needed to pick him up. And as much as Henry put the ball in the back of the net, the strength and the colossus is the word I'd use for Vieira in that middle. He was that team for me. And watching someone like that, and Johnny and Eamonn will tell you, I'm a central midfielder myself. I'm a bit of a Merlot or whatever it is. I said I'm more like Merlot and Perlo, but Vieira was the central midfielder, one of the best I've seen, and I was lucky enough to see play. And he really sort of summed up that team's mentality, and I think a lot of that came from him and the sort of culture in the club at the time. I just feel that they felt they couldn't be beat, and that confidence plays a big part in that, and that strong mentality sort of backs that up. Another game we didn't mention was Chelsea, the 2-1 win at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and that was a tough game as well. And I remember, Vieira sort of popped up and scored those goals. He scored.
We were down after about 2 minutes in that game.
Good Johnson won it. It was and then Vieira and Edu scored the winner for that, I believe, as well. Yeah, but again, Vieira came in that game, scored a goal in that. Then he scored the one at White Hart Lane as well, where he sort of done the move over celebration. He did pop up and score those important goals, and that's what you need your captain to stand up and do. And I think when we needed him the most, in front of goal or the last ditch tackle, he was there, and he was absolutely brilliant. So yeah, for me, the memories, we've covered a lot of ground already. There's only so much we can talk about, but just watching that side's mentality and the message they sent out there, start of the game was just fascinating to watch, really. I
think it's interesting you mentioned the mentality so many times, and I think the sort of elephant in the room is that going to the Fratton Parks, as you mentioned, or definitely going to the Reebok in those days, was when Arsenal would trip up, and teams used to think we can get under their skin, we can rattle them, and the beauty of that season for Arsenal was that they stood up to all those challenges. And I remember being at the game at the Reebok that year, and I'm pretty sure it was a draw. And they, but that was a game that in other seasons Arsenal might have lost. But no, this Arsenal were not going to be, led down that garden path. They weren't going to get a guy set up. They weren't going to lose the game. And it was to see that synergy between the pretty side of the game and the more brutal side of the game, perfectly ensconced in that team.
Yeah.
I think Ozzy, relating to the Reebok, Conor, I think the previous season we'd drawn 2-2. Do you remember Keown got, I think he scored from an OG, but as you said, Bolton knew how to rattle us.
And everything. The whole atmosphere there, you'd show up with it, and it's in this kind of retail park in the edge of the town, and it's all very kind of concrete or whatever. And I remember the Arsenal team bus would show up, and it was such a beautiful bus, you know what I mean, compared to sort of the surroundings, and you could smell the aftershave as soon as the door wafted open, and you just felt, here's your metropolitan elite coming up to the grim north to try and take on Bolton. But Sam Allardyce, to his credit, and I wouldn't be a big fan of a lot of his footballing tactics, but he knew how to get under that team, and he would annoy them, and it's just little things that he would do to disrupt them and make them feel uncomfortable. And for a while there, Bolton were sort of a bogey team. But I remember going to the Reebok. It was always cold. The hottest day of the year. You had the back of the stag. It was just total concrete. That's it. Do you know what? I haven't been there in a few years. The Reebok, or whatever it's called now, was when it was first built. The actual architecture of it looked great on the television and stuff, but it was always freezing when you were there, and it was very Arsenal out of their comfort zone. Yeah.
Yeah, the away end was very cold. It was always in the shade.
I think Bolton's always in the shade.
Yeah, it's here now, in every means of the word. As Ozzy was saying, the mentality.
It's interesting, John. Sorry, what Conor was saying there, because the game you referenced, Jonathan, yourself, the 2-2 draw the season before, that was the one that pretty much cost us the titles. We were in the driving seat. They kicked us off the park then. Lundberg was walking around the pitch, holding his ankle, and for some reason, in the 03-04 season, nobody intimidated us. They were the same players, but we just had a mentality that year, and it was out of order because we really screwed up the 2003 title. We were in the driving seat. I think we lost at home to Leeds, nearly, and Leeds were relegation fodder at the time. But I think the team came back with great result. And there was another thing as well that I just referenced. There were stories at the start of the season that all the players were pissed off because we'd no money, that whatever flights we were getting to European games were standard class, blah blah blah, because we were building a new stadium. And there was a bit of a siege mentality that year, and it just one of those things. I don't think that would, like, Manchester City have been the strongest team, in the history of league football. Not necessarily the best team, season by season, but their dominance has been so strong. But I don't think they'll ever achieve what that team achieved.
No.
If Manchester City can't achieve that, who can?
It was a special team.
It's the unbeaten season. Yeah.
I think it'd be very hard to replicate again, going unbeaten for the whole season. Even Ferguson himself referenced it, didn't he? That season, he says it takes a special team, and I think all the other managers, even around Europe, accepted that. Even in that 06 season where we made the Champions League final, which I think we deserved to win it because we beat the best, the Madrids, the Juventuses, en route into the latter stage. It was a special team for those years, and sadly, I think, in my opinion, as beautiful as a move as the Emirates Stadium is, and it was needed, we sadly lost a top player season on season, which weakened us, and we're only
see, that's everything was distorted by the arrival of Roman Abramovich. The whole financial landscape of the game changed. He came in 2003 or 2002 or whatever it was, that changed everything. Like our financial model just doesn't go there, and we can talk about that another day. But that changed the landscape of everything. And Mourinho with Chelsea, and that was it really, curtains.
But then isn't it great, and I know, look, in a way, football fans love to live in the past, but you don't want to permanently live there, and obviously you want more success. But isn't it great that Invincible team did that before the sort of Abramovich effect to take it over?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas if you'd felt, we missed the boat, and Wenger, the economist, was absolutely, he was, let's build a big stadium, let's have the cover boxes, let's make millions doing that, and then we can put the money into the team. But of course, by the time the stadium was built, as you're alluding to, the game has changed and money was coming from other places.
Yeah.
I really miss Highbury as a stadium. I just think those old school stadiums, there was a character about them, wasn't there? The fans were on the pitch.
Look. Highbury is a beautiful stadium. Great place to watch football, but you'd want to have rocks in your head to think it was a bad move. And I was at the Porto game a couple of weeks ago, and I have to say, like, that's our stadium now where we are.
It's different level, wasn't it?
It's our stadium, and it feels like a stadium. And we all know where we are, and then we all know where we stand and where we sit. And that the Arsenal haven't treated away. If you think of the penalty shootout against Porto, right? And I was in the clock end, and I was only 7 rows back, just behind the Ashburton Army, because the Porto team was on the halfway line, right? And they hadn't got them on the big screen. So I was relying on the crowd. Now, the North Bank gave serious board to Porto when they were taking penalties. There was scarf waving, there was phones on, there was right? And some people might say, of a more Corinthian era, well, that was unsporting. Well, they do it to you.
Yeah.
They do it to you. And Arsenal has been accused of being a library. That I've never heard anything.
That penalty shootout, Eamonn, honestly, it was the TV didn't do it justice watching back the highlights, because the atmosphere in that stadium when they was taking penalties. I don't know if were you there.
It's like a frying pan.
It was unbelievable. Like, every single player went up, we sang their song. I've never quite heard it like that in a penalty shootout, and I felt like we had a part to play in it, and I know it sounds silly, but it felt like you were part of it.
It adds to the confidence of teams, and that's why home advantage is such a big thing. And you're right, Arsenal have got it now, and the games I was at the Man United, what was it? The Man City game early on the season, the Liverpool game. It all adds up. It becomes a part of it where you just feel that, you are out of your comfort zone. You're in our house now. That kind of talk. And
exactly.
It has become that, and it has taken a while to get there. And I always thought it was unfairly. I think at the start the stadium seemed to get a lot of criticism. I always thought it was a beautiful stadium and great, and you could, like, I'm not a fan of West Ham Stadium, for example. I just don't like the atmosphere in it. But I always thought the raw ingredients were always there at the Emirates, but they just needed the team, and finally, hopefully, it's now kicking in for them. Yeah.
What I did like about the FC Porto victory was the way Sergio Conceição went on in the first leg, smoking cigars in the dressing room, thinking that they've turned Arsenal over. And when Mikel Arteta, he was running over to him at the final whistle of the penalty, I think Conceição wanted to say something to him. Arteta just brushed, "Get away, you fool."
Well, Conceição has had a bit of a history with that, hasn't he? With a few coaches, he's thrown a few toys out of the pram. Yeah.
Their game plan nearly worked, though. They did frustrate us, but I think it was always done to be when thank be to God, the away goals rule is gone as well, and I think it's made it a better game, over the 2 legs, but there's one player that stood up for penalties this season with such characters, Bukayo Saka, after the time of the Euro final, 2021 final. I don't think he's missed a penalty since, and he's forced to take the ball.
He missed one at West Ham.
You just excuse that. But he's just growing, hasn't he, into a man? Like his confidence was unreal.
That's all set up for it. The Euros is his moment now this summer.
Yeah.
I mean, that is set up for him to take centre stage now. Yeah.
Like, there were so many great players in that 2004 squad. Conor, what players from this modern day Arsenal squad now would get into that 2014?
It's very interesting because as we've discussed, the quality is so good. But then I can't, like, it would. Okay, so like, who were the centre halves? Remind me, because Keown didn't play many, right? So it was Campbell and Sol Campbell.
Yeah,
they were very, very good. So would Saliba, I think Saliba is brilliant. Would he get in there? It's tough, isn't it?
Get in ahead of Paulo Toure.
He will. He will, certainly. I think he will. I think the sleeve of the future will. Kind of Toure was.
That's it. The will, because he's still only whatever. He's only 23 now, is he? Yes, he's got it all to do. But would Declan Rice get into the midfield again? You see, it's all. But what's brilliant about this Arsenal team is that they're a potential team. They're so young, and yet they're doing it in the here and the now. Like, none of them. You don't want to write the biography of any of them yet, because you feel they all are going to go on and do do more. I mean, Kai
Special
Havertz
teams.
could have a great summer now with the Germans and all that. Look, I think Saka's the one who you would think, that you could see him challenging Ljungberg to get in the team, even though Freddie Ljungberg was so good. I'm sorry, this won't be popular with the Curry fans. He wouldn't have got in ahead of Pires in that season. That invincible season, Pires was undroppable, absolutely, and he wasn't getting in ahead of Henry. But he might have been alongside the two of those. And then look, does Patrick Vieira get displaced by Declan Rice? I'm sorry, he doesn't. Like, Vieira was World Cup winner again. Come back to us in a few years, and we might be putting Declan Rice in that category. But in the here and the now, not quite yet. But that's that. I think it's good and it's healthy. That in my opinion.
Here's one for you now, Connor. Here's one for you now. At right back, Ben White or Lauren?
That's the hardest question.
Now, would it be? Imagine putting them in a ring and going scrapping on it.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
yeah,
that'd be ringside viewing. That would. They are both tough as nails, and they play in the very same way with the very same mentality. Yeah. Lauren, oh my God, Lauren is scared. He was scary.
Great athlete,
very good footballer too. He was a central midfielder. Ben was a central midfielder who became a centre half, who then became, they're the ones, like, obviously, to me, Saka gets into any team, he's that good, right? You just got to find room for Saka in any team, To me, Ben White is probably, because as you quite rightly point out, this team hasn't written its history yet.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's an awkward question to try and deal with. The other team has written its history, I'd say I'd like to think that in 4 years' time you'd be kind of revising. So well, actually,
that's the best way to put it. Yeah.
It's two different areas you're talking about as well, isn't it? Like, the game has moved on in 20 years, but the quality is there definitely in those two teams. Ozzy, you've had a tough time, haven't you? In terms of goalkeeper, actually, lads.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Raya, Ramsdale, it'd be interesting to see that, wouldn't it? But yeah, I'm the same with Conor and Eamonn himself. Is, for me, Saka's the one that walks straight in. Saliba, I think, will be. And I think Connor's made a very good point there. As some possibly in the future, but let's see what they do. But yeah, for me, it was Saka and Saliba the ones I highlighted. But yeah, interesting point about Lehmann. Would Lehmann displace Raya and I'd love to see for entertainment value as well.
Yes, absolutely. Because he'd knock him out.
I've got a Jens Lehmann story for you if you want, guys. I commentated with him at Euro 2016. Well, actually, I commentated alongside Thierry Henry for the opening game, and he didn't. Wow. He was working for BBC TV, but he did radio with me, and it was great. It was, Mark Chapman was in the stadium. I remember I have a lovely photo of sort of myself, Chappers, and Thierry Henry. It's like living the dream, in Paris for the opening game. That was such a highlight of the time. And Henry was great, and obviously everyone wanted a piece of him, and but he handled it all so well. But Jens Lehmann, we were going to a game, and the BBC had booked us a car and a driver, which they wouldn't always do, but it was kind of because he was a big name, and to sort of make sure that he wasn't going to get hassled by people. So the driver drops us off, and that's all fine. And then we come out after the game, and my colleague Juliette Ferrington, who's now with Sky Sports and producer with us at the BBC, and she was the producer. We laughed about this so much over the years. We came out after the game, and we met the guy, young French guy driver, and he was wearing this sharkskin suit and these really fancy shoes, and he was also. So we started following him, and it's the immediate aftermath of the game. There's loads of people, and we're through the crowd, and sort of following this guy, and then he goes down the steps under the Stade de France, and he kind of feels like we're going back on ourselves. We're kind of going, why do we come above ground up here to now be going back? And we go up the steps again, and we think, oh look, he knows some shortcut. He's just beating the traffic here or whatever. We come out, and then he's looking around, and then he goes back downstairs again, and Lehmann's going like, "What is going on here?" And you can imagine the sort of patience level of Jens Lehmann, who just wants to get back to the hotel and has nothing to do with this guy in his sharkskin suit. And then there was one comedy moment, and it's the classic "you had to be there," but I'll try my best to describe it. Where in an underground car park, there's sort of different pillars and barriers that come in. You walk around to the other side of it or whatever. But there was a door, and he went over, and he this real kind of, "Oh, I've got it now," and he went to this door, and we're literally walking around for 20 minutes. And he opens the door, but Lehmann was just so cross him at this stage. He just kept walking around the way the cars would go. And the door came into it was literally, you've gone through a completely unnecessary door. He thought he was into some new, no, you're just still in the same room we're already in. And that was it for Lehmann. And I always remember he said, I am going to get an Uber. And he stormed off. And then, but that in itself isn't the end of the story. So we were back up, and ages later, and he eventually remembers where his car is. And we walk up to the car, but just as we're walking through, you hear this, and it's Lehmann. He goes, I was unable to get an Uber. So he was back just in the nick of time to get the lift back with us. But he wasn't happy. I mean, Jens likes things to be done right, and that was all a bit too sloppy for him.
Oh, no, brilliant.
Great story.
What a character.
And he used to play his techno music. His laptop open, and like proper hardcore techno was the music he listened to. Mad stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, when you see him as a goalkeeper, his whole character was just mantle, wasn't it? But what a goalkeeper!
Ah, yeah,
yeah. Every goalkeeper has an identity, but yeah, you'd go like he was a madman, but he was our madman. You know,
look, I think you have to be a bit of a madman. I mean, and I do like Emi Martinez at Villa for that reason. You know, he's mad. He's mad. But what was the game I was at recently? It was the West Ham Villa game, and Rene Higuita was there because Spain were playing Colombia, and he was doing some publicity for that. But he was the famous scorpion kick goalkeeper, you know, and obviously the TV directors were aware that he was there, so we were hoping there'd be a little bit of madness, and then we could cut to him in the crowd, and it would have been perfect. But Martinez was quite sober and mute that day. But I think he's the right kind of mad you have to be to a goalkeeper, and Lehmann completely embodied that in the past. Absolutely, yeah.
I think as a club as well, lads, we've always been blessed with a good number one. You know, like I know there's been a few howlers over the years, but like we've always had a kind of a good.
If you delete Almunia from your inner conscience,
and obviously Fabianski, you're actually all right.
No, Fabianski was a good goalkeeper.
Nah,
Fabianski was a good goalkeeper. Almunia cost us the title in 2008.
Yeah.
I just want to ask a point there, Conor. You said about Jens Lehmann like stuff doing right. Can you imagine him making the defence at Arsenal? Because I wouldn't want to cross Lehmann. I could imagine what I was.
No, but it would be the Roy Keane problem of why aren't you as perfect as me? It'd be a lot of stick. I'm not sure how much carrot. You know what I mean? Look, I mean, interesting to see, but yeah, I would say patience would wear thin very quickly on all sides. But look, who knows? I mean, and look, I do that is the genius of these players, was that they knew what they wanted and they went out and they just got it. And there's no taking passengers or even taking shortcuts. It's do the work, hard as nails professionals, and it is fantastic to I think with the hindsight, we're all getting a bit older now, whatever. But you look back and you see, wow, like how really good these people were. There's no hype about these guys. These were legends. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and invincibles in their own right. Just briefly, lads. I just want to go with your favourite goal from that season. I know there was so many to choose, but I don't want to go myself with Robert Perez against Liverpool at Anfield. That corner effort past Jersey Dudek, what a finish, and that ended up being the winner that day. Conor, did you have a standout goal?
I don't. I mean, look, all the. I'm going to struggle to kind of remember the games and whatnot. But those Henry moments where he would just open the body like a sail and put it across the keeper. It was kind of carbon copy goal he did time and time again, didn't he? And that's the memory of it. The cool as ice. Not going to miss the opportunities, and he was. He did. I mean, how many did he score? He must have been up to
40 that season. 30 goals. So there was a lot of them with just that exactly. He was cutting in. He'd open up the body and he'd sort of side foot it across the keeper into the body. That was the Henry goal. That's what I'll always remember that season being. Yeah, 4 against Leeds as well at home, which they were sick and tired of playing him. I think that was his favourite, especially Paul Robinson. That was the season. Sadly, Leeds went down. Didn't see them for about 20 years as well. Eamonn, your favourite goal from that season? So many top ones.
My favourite goal that season was the second goal on the Dummy Trophy day when we beat Spurs, and they were on the attack and in 3 passes. I just think it summed up Arsenal. In 3 passes, we just sliced them up.
Yeah.
Henry, Bergkamp, Vieira, like Dennis had reinvented himself at that stage. He knew he hadn't got the the pace anymore to be up front. So he became actually the perfect number 10, you know. And a lot of the goals that you referenced earlier on, I was just thinking about Dennis made the assist, Dennis made the assist, Dennis made the assist, you know. But that particular one, if you remember it, it went up the left-hand side, 3 passes, and they were carved open. It was just genius, you know. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and Andy O'Brien remembers Dennis Bergkamp too well for the old swivel. I know Shane Given was on Match Today too, and he says he didn't mean that at all. He was on the end of many Dennis Bergkamp goals as well.
That was 2.
I was going to say, it was just before that, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
2, yeah.
What a player. Sadly, he's flying, but he's had many players flying around him. Ozzy, your favourite goal from that season? I know you were more
repeat Eamonn's. I've got another one, but it was the Thierry Henry goal against Manchester United at home, where he had a ball fizzed into him, one touch, volley, sort of on the volley. Carroll was in goal. Roy Carroll was, I think, in goal.
No, Jonathan was in goal.
And I remember it being quite central, but the swerve on it, if you remember, it just took it away from the keeper. The keeper had it covered until the last minute, and it's against United. It was at home. It was a worldie. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, sorry, Connor. Eamonn keeps bringing this up. It was the 5-a-side tournament Arsenal used to hold for fans. I know Eamonn had a stinker that day because of hangover the night before. But I kept him in until
on the pitch. But I'm sad about Jonathan. He, not only did he not save the ball on the way in, he didn't save it on the way back out. Anyway.
Well, he's the worst keeper since Gunnosaurus, I think, at the Emirates.
Yeah, sadly, this will be Ozzy's last appearance on the show for all those filmed out comments. It's sad the way things end on a sour note. So many good memories. No, I have to say it's been a really good show, a busy show. Looking back on the Invincibles season, and hopefully on the 19th of May we'll have another trophy. Fingers crossed. Hopefully Connor's commentating on that one, and hopefully Ducory doesn't score another rocket on the last day season.
I'll be at the Etihad on Sunday anyway. I'm very much looking forward to that one. Yeah, that's going to be big.
How do you feel briefly, Connor, on that one? Can you see what would you? I'm going myself with a draw.
Yeah. I think a draw would be a good result. Yeah. I think City at home have struggled. You know, Liverpool were able to get a draw against them, and they haven't been completely unbeatable or anything like that. But I think whereas Arsenal have been able to beat City at the Emirates, they've been able to beat Liverpool. You would take the draw, but you know, and look, City can go out there and they can win that 4-0. We know, you know, they've got that capable in them. But if Arsenal score first, it just changes the mood. The City just grow momentum. I've seen in so many games. They score early, they go on to get a hatful. If you can keep them to half-time at 0-0, you've really got a chance. And it'll just be such a good game because the Arsenal have every right to show up there believing that they can win the game and going for it. And they don't have to bow down and they don't have to feel insecure or inferior because they look at the results they've had this season and they've been able to beat all the big teams. So it's what I love as a commentator. What I love is that you don't know what's going to happen. That's what's brilliant about it. And that's why people tune in and remain engaged with a game because there's no sort of there's no sort of preordained narrative that then could be changed. No, this is wide open. This really could be 3-0 to either team. I genuinely believe that. Could be 0-0.
In your opinion, Connor, you've commentated on many a season now. Is this the most exciting title race that you've seen?
Well, I think statistically it is for 10 years in terms of having teams at this stage, and I think we're also keen to have it. That in the old days people only start talking about title races now, really. Whereas we've been talking about it since November or October even. So it's just different in that way. I think people always go back to the famous Kevin Keegan. I'd love it if we beat them when Newcastle was so far ahead and United were able to drag them back, and that was a brilliant title race in terms of just that pure drama. I think we thought, maybe not by this time last year's season, but say like in January last season, we thought we were going to get it, and it obviously faded away before the end. And funny enough, I think it was when Arsenal showed up at City and what was it, 4-1? I can't even remember.
4-1.
4-1. But I think that there was still if they'd won that game, it was still on, and then that was it. No, like that extinguished. Title race done. Thank you, Arsenal. it's been fun, but you're not going to win the title this year. And I think that's why it's different this time around, and that's all they can do. But it was later last season. It was kind of well into April. It wasn't nearly the end of April when they met last season. So it's slightly different course. But yeah, look, in terms of modern times, last 10 years, hands down, best title race, and long may it continue. I mean, genuinely, my dream aspiration is going to the final day and all three teams can still win, which would probably cause heart attack for the fans of the teams. But that, as a very selfish commentator who just wants the drama, that's what I'd pick.
And I think, referencing that briefly, Conor, that 4-1 defeat we lost at the end, that hurt Arsenal and it hurt Arteta, and you can see that team has grown. It has grown, and he would have shown that over and over to them. And even Guardiola fears us more than Liverpool now in the title race.
Jonathan, we'd already lost the league at that stage. We went up there with Rob Holding at the back.
Well, who scored that day, Eamonn? In fairness to him.
Yeah, Rob Holding scored. I mean,
that shows
if you
how
want to
bad
read the Shoot magazine and do the stats on who scored, like we were the beaten ducket when we went up there last year.
Should have beaten City that night.
No, we were I'd have
let him win that night.
Hang on a second. We were the beaten ducket when we went up there last year because
I think you were still in it, Eamonn.
We'd already dropped points.
It was the final nail. It was. The goose coat miracles were needed, but miracles were still possible. Whereas once that happened, not even a miracle was going to change it then. Yeah.
This season we're playing in a different territory on the pitch with different control, and I don't think there's any possibility that City will roll us over 4-0 because we're not that type of team anymore. Yeah. Right? I don't think there's any possibility that we'll roll over them 3-0 because they don't get rolled over 3-0. But I do think that we should go up there, and this is where I really agree with what Conor was saying. Go up there with the belief that you can win the game. Now, the crucial thing is, if Saka is crocked and Gabriel is crocked, we have a problem. Simple as that, right? Neither of them played in the internationals. They are two big players for us at this level of the game, right? If Saka is fit, Gabriel is fit, then on the other side, they've got Stones and Walker. Stones is an important player for them, So it depends on who's fit and who's not. But I just think that the Arsenal are playing in different areas of the pitch than they were last season. Last season, we were like a firecracker. We were emotional. We were exciting. This season, we're much more controlled. And I think we've got to go up there, not go daft, but not go defensive either. Believe, as Conor says, believe that we can get something up there. If we come away out there with a point, it's a phenomenal result. They have to be favourites because they're at home. Look at their home record. Look at their record generally. But we've got a chance to go up and do something. But I think a lot depends on the fitness of Saka and Gabriel, to be honest,
Yeah, we showed at the Emirates we can beat them 1-0 earlier on the season, and it's going to be a cracking run in. I think we all can say that. I have to say it's been a busy show, lads. It's been great going down memory lane for the Invincibles. I'd like to thank Conor for coming on again.
Thanks very much, guys. It's been great.
It's been a pleasure having you on. Hopefully, a few match tickets now come to the end of the season.
We'll send you to
I was hoping you'd sort me out.
No, I know Eamonn has a few cans of beer Moretti he can give you as a trade-off.
I'd be well interested in that.
That's my consumption now for the night is two cans. Yeah.
They're 0-0, by the way. We don't endorse any of this alcohol nonsense. Not till May, Henry. Thanks to Conor, thanks to Eamonn, and thanks to Ozzy. Thanks for coming on. I hope our viewers and listeners like the show, and always leave a comment as always. So until next week, thanks for listening and have a good week.
Great stuff.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.